Bobby Fischer, a name that resonates with excellence and brilliance in the realm of chess. Throughout his career, he mesmerized the chess world with his unique style, unmatched creativity, and an unwavering desire to dominate the board. With such a legendary reputation, what are some of his greatest games ever played? Today, I have a pair to share with you. Let's get right into it. The first game took place in 1963 against legendary player Robert Byrne. Robert Byrne was an international master who later became a grandmaster. On the other hand, Bobby Fischer was on a 10-game winning streak before this match. This was certainly a highly anticipated game at the time. Robert, playing as white, opened with pawn d4, which led to King's Indian to start the match. Bobby soon plays the strategic move of pawn c6 in order to establish his control of the center. A few moves in response quickly set up a symmetrical variation of the Grunfeld defense. Robert moves his knight to c3, while Bobby plays bishop g7. After a couple of turns of developing pieces, Robert castles on the king side. It was clear that his intention was to play a slow, calculated game in order to avoid falling victim to Bobby's win streak. A few pawns and bishops are moved, and the game is relatively even. Robert was playing for Bobby to be the aggressor, hoping for a mistake. The game is only 11 moves in, but it's already halfway over. The remaining moves is what leads to this being an impressive win for Bobby. Bobby chooses to play rook e8, setting up his pawn to move forward. In response, Robert pushes his queen to d2, leaving his rooks in a clear path to each other. Bobby moves the expected pawn to e5, pressuring d4. Robert takes the attacking pawn, as Bobby quickly avenges it with his knight. The next decision is an important one. The best idea for Robert is to take one of his rooks and set it up to attack the d5 pawn. The looming question is which rook should be the one to do so. By choosing to move the f1 rook to d1, it frees Robert from the a6 bishop pin. That move would also allow the other rook to be used for an attack on the wide-open c-file. Knowing all of this, Robert decides to move that f1 rook to d1. This decision turned out to be the wrong one. The rook he had moved served an important purpose of protecting f2. The importance of the f2 square will be apparent very soon. Bobby moves his knight to d3, staying aggressive. This move prevents Robert's queen and rook from directly attacking the center. With limited options, Robert moves his queen to c2. This allows his rook to attack Bobby's knight. Bobby makes the surprising move of sacrificing his knight by taking the aforementioned f2 square. Due to Robert moving the wrong rook earlier, he is unable to take the knight with his rook, instead having to use his king. Bobby, staying on the hunt, checks Robert with knight g4. This essentially forces Robert to retreat with his king. Bobby moves the same knight to e3, capturing the pawn. All of this creates a family fork. Robert then attempts to save his queen with a move to d2. The next move is extremely shocking on Bobby's part. Most players would take the rook with the e3 knight, but that is not what Bobby does. He instead decides to take the g2 bishop. While no one viewing the game understood the logic behind this decision at the time, Bobby did. He knew that the bishop was a lot more impactful than the rook in the current state of the game. It was the only piece defending Robert's king. Robert takes the knight, to which Bobby moves his pawn to d4. This sets up an attack on the c3 knight. This move also clears the way for Bobby's bishop to check Robert's king. Robert then takes the d4 pawn with his e2 knight. This allows Bobby to move the bishop to b7, checking Robert. Getting out of check, the king moves to f1. This appears to be an advantageous move for Robert, but in a moment, he will have lost. Bobby responds with queen d7, and suddenly the game ends. Everyone assumed that Bobby had resigned due to a piece disadvantage. However, it was Robert that had actually resigned. Robert knew he had a limited amount of moves left, and Bobby had just outplayed him. This game is one of Bobby's personal favorites, and undoubtedly a legendary one. The other game I have to share with you today is none other than the game of the century. This match took place in 1956 between a young Bobby Fischer and Donald Byrne. This is the game that would lead to the rise in popularity of Bobby. Let's dissect this match and what led to its famous name. Donald, starting with white, opens with knight f3. In response, Bobby moves his own knight to f6. A few pieces are moved, and Bobby has resorted to the Grunfeld defense. Bobby moves pawn to d5, Donald then with queen b3. The pawn moves to capture c4, and queen captures right back. Bobby moves the c7 pawn to c6, saving it from any harm. Donald chooses to go with pawn e4, followed by a black knight d7. This essentially prepares the knight for a move to b6, while rook d1 leads to the knight moving to the previously mentioned spot. An important move is made as Donald plays queen c5. This move is part of an idea Donald has, which will be enacted soon. Bobby responds with bishop g4, to which Donald moves his own bishop to g5. This move breaks a basic rule of chess, which is moving the same piece twice in an opening. He only does this to try and bother the e7 pawn. Punishing Donald, Bobby plays knight a4. Instead of capturing it with his own knight, Donald chooses to move his queen to a3. Black knight captures c3 and is swiftly met with pawn capturing c3 back. Bobby moves his knight to e4, capturing the pawn. This threatens the white bishop on g5. To get out of this, Donald has his bishop capture the pawn on e7. Bobby goes with queen b6, to which Donald then goes with bishop c4. Black knight quickly captures the pawn on c3, which sparks an idea for Donald. He moves his bishop to c5, threatening Bobby's queen. Bobby checks with rook e8, as Donald's king moves to f1 to escape. The next move by Bobby is what makes this game so legendary. He plays bishop e6, which is such a powerful move that it forces Donald to capture Bobby's queen to avoid a forced checkmate. Donald moves his bishop to capture that queen on b6, knowing the severity. However, this move sets Bobby up to dish out an extremely powerful blow. He captures c4 with his bishop, checking the king. Donald moves his king to g1, and Bobby advances his knight to e2. This checks white king again, and it is forced to move to f1. Continuing his grand attack, Bobby captures d4 with his knight. This once again checks white king due to the c4 bishop. Donald's king has to return back to g1, while the black knight returns to e2, checking once more. The king returns to f1 as black knight checks again on c3. Still having no options, the king retreats back to g1. Instead of capturing the d1 rook, Bobby chooses to capture b6 with his pawn. Donald decides to move his queen to b4 while Bobby brings his rook down to a4, which protects the bishop. This makes white queen move to capture b6. Only after this does Bobby finally capture the d1 rook with his knight. A few moves later and Bobby is clearly in a dominant position. He has a significant piece advantage. Donald tries to continue, but it proves to be pointless. The game is already over, and he soon loses. The domination in this game by Bobby Fischer is a clear indication as to why fans of chess hold this game to such a high regard. He is undoubtedly an all-time great, and all of his magnificent games reflect this.